In this lesson we're going to look at solving trig equations with squares in them. Now I don't mean the shape squares, I mean a squared symbol here. So let's look at this first example. Solve this equation between 0 and 360 degrees. So we want all the solutions of this between 0 and 360 degrees. Now because you've got a squared and we've not seen this before, we kind of want to undo that. So think back to Pythagoras when you've got something squared equals something. What you would do to undo a squared was you would square root it. Now again, we have to be careful here because when you square root something like 9, some of you would say just 3. But we should know that negative 3 is also the square root of 9, since 3 times 3 makes 9, but also negative 3 times negative 3 makes 9. So when you square root this here, what you want to do is give a positive and a negative value. Now, the square root of a quarter, if you were doing it, just square at the top and square at the bottom. Square at the top is 1, square at the bottom is 2. So it would be a half. A half times a half is a quarter, but it would be plus or minus a half. And instead of writing plus a half or minus a half, we tend to do this. You should have seen it before, but put a plus above a minus and say plus or minus a half. Now, when looking over here, what we're thinking about is how many answers we're going to have, because sign needs to be positive and negative. So we should know that sign's positive in the first quadrant. We know that sign's positive in the second quadrant. We know sign's negative in the third quadrant here, and we know it's negative down here as well. So in this case, we're actually looking for 4 different solutions. We're looking for positive values and negative values. So the first thing we need to do here, so that we can take away from 180 and add and so on, is work out your acute angle. Now this can be called your base angle, which we called before I think in the video lessons, or it can be called the acute angle or the relative acute angle. An acute angle is between 0 and 90, and the base angle is the same idea. Get your base to work with, which is an acute angle. Now when you're working that out, you always inverse the positive value, because the negative value doesn't give you an acute angle or a base angle to work with. So inverse sine a half and you'll get 30 degrees. Just type it into your calculator, inverse sine 0.5. Okay, so let's look at all our solutions, all 4 of them. So the first thing I want to do is, when it's a half, what's our answers? So that would be the first 2 answers here, the 30 degrees. Or to get into this quadrant, take away 180, and 180 take away 30. So that's going to give you 150 degrees. But we also want to know when sine x is equal to negative a half. So that's these 2 answers. So go forwards from 180 with your acute angle, or your base angle. That's going to give you 210. And then go back from 360. And that's going to give you 330. So there's all our 4 answers there. Now, good habit to get into is to write all your 4 answers underneath nice and tidily and clearly. So there's all my answers, like that. I've also underlined it just to show that's my final solution, because quite a lot of work in there. Right, let's look at one more, a wee bit harder because there's more numbers involved. Now this is the same process as before. What you want to do is try and get down to tan x equals, or sin x equals, or cos x equals. So the first thing I would do here is take away the 4, just like normal equation, balancing, take away 4 from both sides. I would then divide by 5. That's going to give you 0.4, and then you want to square root to get down to tan x equals. So square root is 0.4, and remember to give a plus or minus answer. Okay, positive and negative values is what we're looking for here. Now the same idea applies. When's tan positive? Well, tan's positive in the all quadrant and also the tan quadrant. And when's it negative? Well, it's negative in the sine quadrant and it's negative in the cosine quadrant. So no change here. We're looking for 4 solutions. So remember, when you're working out your base angle or your acute angle, inverse the positive. So inverse tan positive 0.6. And you get roughly 32.2 degrees. Okay, so I need to work out all my values now. So I'm going to firstly concentrate on the 0.63 when tan is positive. So that will be the all quadrant, which is this answer here, 32.2. And also this quadrant here, which is forwards from 180. So 180 plus 32.2, and that gives you 212.2. I'm also looking when tan is negative. Now tan is negative in the sine quadrant, so go back from 180, and that will give you 147.8, and it's also negative here, so go back from 360, and you'll get your final answer there, 327.8. Now to finish it off, just write them, I tend to write them in order as well, so 32.2 comes first, then it's the 147, then 212, and then 327.8. This is good practice, this stuff, and it leads into higher maths as well.